The rain had been falling for 3 hours, turning the courtyard of the Crossed Keys Inn into a river of mud. Elowyn Ashford stood beneath the narrow eaves, clutching a single carpet bag that contained everything she had left in the world. Her lavender traveling dress was soaked through, clinging to her skin. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins, plastered to her face and neck. She was shivering, though she barely noticed anymore. Inside the inn, warm light flickered through fogged windows. Laughter drifted out whenever the door opened. She wasn't welcome there. Not anymore. Still out here? The innkeeper appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, his face a mask of contempt. "I told you, miss. No money, no room. I run a respectable establishment. Please." Elowyn hated how small her voice sounded. "If I could just wait until morning. Send word to my family." "Your gentleman already told me what you are." The innkeeper's lip curled. "Said you'd try to talk your way into sympathy. Said you were trouble." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I don't know what you did to make Lord Whitmore abandon you here, but a woman alone, no coin, no reputation, you're not my problem." Lord Whitmore. Even hearing Percival's title made her stomach clench. 3 days ago, everything had been different. 3 days ago, she'd been engaged to one of England's most eligible bachelors. Percival Whitmore, heir to a shipping fortune and thousands of acres of prime farmland. Handsome, charming, attentive. Her family had been overjoyed. Finally, after years of struggle, the Ashfords would have security. Then she'd found the documents. She hadn't meant to snoop. She'd been waiting in Percival's study at Whitmore Hall while he finished a meeting with his father's solicitor. A drawer had been left partially open. Inside, she'd seen her own family name on a legal document. Curious, she'd pulled it out. Then another. Then a dozen more. Land transfers. Forged signatures. Bribes to magistrates. Families who'd owned their farms for generations, suddenly dispossessed through fraudulent claims. The Ashfords weren't the first. They were merely the latest in a pattern stretching back 20 years. Percival's fortune wasn't built on shipping. It was built on stolen land and ruined lives. When she'd confronted him, demanding he make it right before she could marry him, his handsome face had gone cold. Not angry, not defensive, just calculating. "You're very moral, Elowyn," he'd said, straightening his cufflinks. "It's one of the things I found charming about you. But morality is a luxury for people who can afford it. Your family certainly can't. Those documents prove fraud. Dozens of families lost everything. Documents you can't prove you saw. Documents that will disappear the moment you leave this room." He'd smiled, that same smile he'd used when he proposed. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to forget what you found. We're going to take a lovely trip to the country to celebrate our engagement, and when we return, you're going to be a grateful, obedient bride who knows her place. And if I refuse, then I'll destroy your family completely. The debts your father owes? I hold those notes. One word from me, and the Ashfords lose everything. Your mother on the street. Your brother's school fees unpaid. Your sister's chances at a decent marriage ruined." She should have agreed. She should have played along, bought time, found another way. Instead, she'd told him she would rather die than marry a thief. The trip to the country had happened anyway, but when they'd stopped at this inn, 50 miles from anywhere, Percival had ordered her belongings thrown into the mud and left her standing in the courtyard. "Still unmarried, Elowyn?" He'd called from the carriage window, laughing as the horses pulled away. "How sad. Perhaps you'll find a farmer desperate enough to take damaged goods." That was 6 hours ago. The rain hadn't stopped since. "Please," she tried again with the innkeeper. "I have a ring. My grandmother's." She pulled it from her finger, the thin gold band that was her only inheritance. "It's not worth much, but surely—" "I don't take stolen jewelry." He snatched it from her hand, examining it. though I suppose I could hold it as security against the Crown's investigation. I didn't steal anything. That's not what Lord Whitmore said when he paid your bill. The innkeeper pocketed her ring. He said you were a thief and a liar. Said anyone who helped you would regret it. Elowyn felt the last of her hope crumble. Percival had poisoned even this well. No one in this village would help her. She had no money for a coach, no way to send word to her family, and a reputation that would follow her wherever she went. She was utterly alone. The sound of hoofbeats cut through the rain. A single rider approached at speed, his dark coat streaming water, his horse's hooves throwing mud. He pulled to a stop in the courtyard, dismounting with efficient grace. "Rooms for the night," he called to the innkeeper. "My horse needs attention. Hot food, hot bath, your best accommodations." His voice was deep, commanding. The innkeeper's demeanor changed instantly, all obsequious smiles and bowing. "Of course, Your Grace. Right away, Your Grace. Your Grace." A duke, then. Elowyn pressed herself against the wall, trying to disappear. The last thing she needed was another nobleman witnessing her humiliation. But the stranger paused, his gaze falling on her. In the lamplight spilling from the inn, she saw sharp features, dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and pale gray eyes that seemed to see everything. "Who is this?" he asked. "No one of consequence, Your Grace." The innkeeper moved to block his view. "Just a bit of trouble Lord Whitmore left behind." Those gray eyes sharpened. "Whitmore?" "Yes, Your Grace. Abandoned her here this afternoon. No money, no family, no—" "I heard you the first time." The stranger stepped around the innkeeper, approaching Elowyn. She lifted her chin, refusing to cower, even as rainwater dripped from her hair. "What did Percival Whitmore do to you?" he asked quietly. Something in his voice made her answer honestly. "I discovered he's been stealing land from families across 3 counties, forging documents, bribing officials. When I refused to keep silent, he left me here to destroy my reputation." The innkeeper sputtered. "Your Grace, you can't believe—" "I can believe quite a lot about the Whitmores." The stranger's voice was ice. "Fetch the lady dry clothes and a hot meal. Put her in the room adjoining mine." "But Your Grace—" "Now." The innkeeper fled. The stranger turned back to Elowyn, something almost like respect flickering across his face. "You refused to stay silent, knowing what it would cost you?" "I couldn't marry a man who built his fortune on stolen lives. Even though it meant losing everything? Some things matter more than comfort." He studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It was a small, cold thing, but real. "I'm Theron Blackwood," he said, "Duke of Hartmore." Elowyn's heart stopped. Everyone knew that name. The Duke of Hartmore was the most powerful man in the Northern Territories, commanding vast estates and political influence that rivaled the Crown's. He was also, according to everything she'd ever heard, the Whitmores' greatest enemy. "You're the man who's been trying to destroy the Whitmore family for 7 years." He extended his hand. "It seems, Miss Ashford, that fate has delivered me exactly what I've been looking for." 2 hours later, Elowyn sat in a private parlor, wrapped in borrowed blankets, a fire roaring in the hearth, and hot soup warming her from the inside. The Duke sat across from her, still in his traveling clothes, watching her with those calculating gray eyes. "Tell me everything," he said. "Every document you saw, every name, every date, every detail." She told him. The land transfers, the forged signatures, the bribes, the families she'd recognized, people her own parents had known, all of them dispossessed and scattered. When she finished, the Duke was silent for a long moment. "You have proof of this." "I saw the documents. I can describe them exactly. But Percival will have destroyed them by now." "Perhaps. Perhaps not." He stood, pacing to the window. The Whitmores are arrogant. They've never faced real consequences. They may believe they're untouchable. Aren't they? No one is untouchable. He turned to face her. Miss Ashford, I'm going to make you an offer. It will sound insane. I ask only that you hear me out completely before responding. Eowyn's hands tightened on her soup bowl. I'm listening. Marry me. The bowl nearly slipped from her fingers. I beg your pardon? Marry me, and you become the Duchess of Hartmore. Untouchable. Beyond the reach of Percival Whitmore or anyone else who wishes you harm. He crossed back to his chair, sitting with the controlled grace of a predator. In return, you help me build a case against the Whitmore family. Your testimony, your knowledge, everything you remember. Together, we dismantle them completely. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about strategy. You don't know me. We met an hour ago. I know enough. His gaze was steady. You chose conscience over safety. You refused to be complicit in evil, even when compliance would have given you everything you wanted. That tells me more about your character than a year of courtship. But you don't love me. No. And you don't love me. This isn't a romance, Miss Ashford. It's an alliance. He leaned forward. You have information I need. I have protection you need. Separately, the Whitmores will destroy us both. Together, we can destroy them. Eowyn's mind raced. An hour ago, she'd been contemplating a future of poverty and disgrace. Now the most powerful duke in England was offering her his name, his protection, his resources. Why do you hate them so much? She asked. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, quickly suppressed. 7 years ago, my younger brother Callum was engaged to a woman named Helena Grey. Percival Whitmore wanted her for himself. When Callum refused to step aside, there was a hunting accident. His voice remained steady, but his hands clenched. The inquest ruled it accidental. But I know the truth. I've spent 7 years trying to prove it. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me make them pay. He met her eyes. Justice for your stolen families. Justice for my brother. Together. Eowyn thought of Percival's face as he'd driven away, laughing. She thought of the families whose names she'd seen in those documents, people who'd lost everything to Whitmore greed. She thought of her own family, still vulnerable, still holding debts that Percival could call in at any moment. If I do this, she said slowly, I want your word. Justice for everyone they've harmed, not just revenge. Agreed. And my family, my parents, my brother, my sister, they need protection too. Done. They'll be brought to Hartmore within the week. One more thing. She held his gaze. If this arrangement ever puts you in danger, if I become a liability, you let me go. No argument. The Duke rose, crossing to stand before her. He extended his hand. I promise. Do we have an agreement? Eowyn looked at his hand. Strong, scarred across the knuckles. The hand of a man who'd just offered to make her a duchess so they could destroy their common enemies together. She'd been abandoned in the rain by a man who'd pretended to love her. Now she was binding herself to a man who'd promised her nothing but honesty and war. She took his hand. We have an agreement. His grip was firm, warm, and certain. Then rest tonight, Miss Ashford. He released her hand and moved toward the door. Tomorrow I take you to Hartmore. We have work to do. After he left, Eowyn stared at the fire, feeling the weight of what she'd just done settle over her like armor. Percival Whitmore thought she was finished. Ruined. Destroyed. He had no idea what was coming. Hartmore Castle rose from the moors like something out of legend. Massive stone walls, dark with age, climbed 4 stories into a sky heavy with clouds. Towers anchored each corner, their narrow windows watching the surrounding countryside like vigilant eyes. A deep moat, fed by a diverted river, encircled the entire structure. The only approach was a stone bridge wide enough for a single carriage. "It's a fortress," Elowen breathed, peering through the carriage window. "It was built during the Wars of the Roses." Theron rode alongside on horseback, as he had for most of the 2-day journey. "My ancestors held it against 3 sieges. No army has ever breached these walls. And now? Now it's simply home." He guided his horse closer to the carriage window. "The staff will be curious. A duchess is unexpected. But they're loyal. You'll be safe here." Safe. The word felt foreign after everything that had happened. The carriage rolled across the bridge and through a massive gatehouse into a central courtyard. Staff emerged immediately, forming orderly lines. Elowen counted at least 40 people, from an elderly butler whose posture suggested he'd been managing this household since before Theron was born, to kitchen maids who couldn't have been more than 15. Theron dismounted and opened the carriage door himself, offering his hand. Elowen took it, stepping down onto ancient cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of use. "Mrs. Pemberton," Theron addressed a tall woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes. "This is Miss Elowen Ashford. She will be the Duchess of Hartmore within the fortnight. See to her comfort." If Mrs. Pemberton was surprised, she didn't show it. She simply curtsied and said, "Welcome to Hartmore, Miss Ashford. We are honored to serve you." "Thank you, Mrs. Pemberton." Elowen kept her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "I look forward to learning from you all." Something that might have been approval flickered across the housekeeper's face. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of transformation. Elowen had expected lessons in etiquette and deportment. She hadn't expected an entire army of tutors, each more demanding than the last. A dance master who made her repeat the same waltz steps until her feet bled. A protocol instructor who drilled her on forms of address until she could recite them in her sleep. A voice coach who taught her to project authority without raising her volume. A historian who walked her through 3 centuries of Hartmore lineage and political alliances. "The Whitmores have been enemies of this house for 4 generations, the historian explained. "It began with a disputed land claim in 1742. Since then, they've blocked every reform we've proposed, sabotaged every alliance we've built, and personally cost the Blackwood family more than can be calculated." "And the current Lord Whitmore?" "Edmund Whitmore is the worst of them. His father was merely greedy. Edmund is calculating. Every move he makes serves a larger strategy." The historian paused. "Including, I suspect, his son's engagement to you." "What do you mean?" "The Ashford family holds a small parcel of land near the Welsh border. Unremarkable, except that it controls access to a valley the Whitmores need for a planned railway expansion. Your marriage to Percival would have given them that land without the inconvenience of another forgery." Elowen felt sick. "I was just another acquisition." "To them? Yes. But you didn't cooperate." The historian smiled grimly. "That's why you're here, instead of there." In the evenings, Elowen dined with Theron. Not at opposite ends of a massive table, as she'd expected, but at a small table near the library fireplace, where they could speak privately. "Tell me more about the Reynolds family," he said one night, consulting his ever-present notebook. "You mentioned seeing their name in the documents." "Thomas Reynolds. His family owned a farm near Millbrook for 5 generations. The Whitmores claimed his grandfather's deed was forged, that the land had always belonged to their estate." Elowen closed her eyes, remembering. "I saw the original Reynolds deed in Percival's study. It was genuine. The forgery was the Whitmore claim." "Do you remember the date on the original deed?" 1783, March. There was a wax seal with a rose emblem." Theron made a note. "The Reynolds family scattered after they lost the farm. Thomas died in a workhouse 2 years ago. His widow and children are somewhere in Manchester, if they survived." "Can we find them?" "I have people looking." He set down his pen. "You remember remarkable detail." "I've always had a good memory for documents. My father taught me to read contracts when I was 12. He said a woman who couldn't protect herself legally was a woman who'd be cheated. Wise man. Desperate man. He knew he couldn't leave us much. Eowyn looked at the fire. The Whitmores hold his debts now. Percival bought them specifically to control me. Those debts have already been paid. Her head snapped up. What? I settled them yesterday. Your family is free. Theron's voice was matter of fact. Your parents and siblings will arrive at Hartmoor next week. I've arranged for your brother's school fees to be covered through university, and I've established a dowry for your sister substantial enough to attract respectable suitors. Eowyn felt tears prick her eyes. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He met her gaze. You're risking everything to help me destroy the Whitmores. The least I can do is ensure your family doesn't suffer for your courage. That's not strategy. No, he admitted. It's not. Something shifted between them in that moment. Something neither acknowledged, but both felt. 3 days before the wedding, Theron hosted a small gathering. Local gentry, a few political allies, people who mattered in the north, but weren't connected to London society. A controlled environment, he called it. A rehearsal for what was to come. Eowyn wore deep blue silk, borrowed from Theron's mother's wardrobe and hastily altered to fit. Sapphires glittered at her throat. Her dark hair was arranged in an elegant style that Mrs. Pemberton had spent 2 hours perfecting. She didn't feel like a duchess. She felt like a girl playing dress-up. You look terrified, Theron murmured as they stood outside the drawing-room doors. I am terrified. Good. Use it. He offered his arm. Terror keeps you sharp. Complacency gets you killed. Is that supposed to be reassuring? It's supposed to be true. He nodded to the footman who opened the doors. Remember, you're not performing for them. They're auditioning for your approval. The evening was a carefully orchestrated dance, 12 guests, each chosen for specific reasons. Eowyn remembered every name, every title, and every family connection. She asked the right questions, laughed at the right moments, and steered conversations toward topics she'd been briefed on. When Lady Ashworth mentioned concerns about investment irregularities, Eowyn saw her opening. I've heard whispers about certain families whose business practices may not withstand scrutiny, she said carefully. One hopes that honest investors aren't being taken advantage of. Which families? Lady Ashworth leaned forward. I couldn't say definitively, but I'd advise caution with anyone whose fortune grew too quickly during times when others struggled. Seeds planted, doubt sown. After the guests departed, Theron found her in the library, nursing a glass of wine with shaking hands. You exceeded expectations, he said. I felt like I was going to vomit the entire time. But you didn't. He sat across from her. Lady Ashworth will talk. Lord Pemberton will mention your comments to his banker. The questions will spread. Is it enough? It's a start. He studied her. You're more than I expected, Eowyn Ashford. Is that a compliment? It's the truth. He stood, moving toward the door. The wedding is in 3 days. After that, we'll be invited to Lady Ashworth's midsummer ball. The Whitmores will be there. Eowyn's heart stuttered. So soon? I'd hoped for more time to prepare, but Lady Ashworth moved her date forward. He paused at the door. Percival will see you. He'll know you survived, that you've married his greatest enemy, that everything he tried to destroy is now protected. Are you ready for that? No. Then you have 3 days to get ready. His eyes met hers. Because ready or not, the war begins at that ball. The door closed behind him, and Eowyn was left alone with the fire and the knowledge that everything she'd survived so far was merely preparation for what was coming. The wedding took place in Hartmoor's ancient chapel, witnessed only by Mrs. Pemberton, the elderly butler, and a minister who asked no questions. Elowen wore ivory silk, Theron wore black. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Theron kissed her briefly, formally. But his hand lingered on hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Welcome to the war, Duchess," he murmured against her ear. That night they dined alone in the library as usual. Same small table, same fire, same careful distance between them. Except now she wore his ring, and everything had changed. "Your family arrives tomorrow," Theron said. "I've prepared rooms in the East Wing. Your brother can continue his studies with my own tutors." "Thank you." Elowen twisted the unfamiliar weight of the wedding band. "For everything. You're my wife now. Your family is my family." He paused. "That's not just strategy, Elowen." She looked up, meeting his eyes. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement of what was growing despite their intentions. "The ball is in 5 days," she said, changing the subject. "Tell me what to expect." "Lady Ashworth's Midsummer Ball is the event of the northern season. 200 guests. Everyone who matters will be there." He leaned back in his chair. "Including Lord Edmund Whitmore, Lady Marguerite, and Percival. All 3 of them. All 3. They'll have heard rumors about our marriage by now. They'll be prepared for you." His jaw tightened. "Percival will try to discredit you publicly. His mother will try to corner you privately. His father will watch and calculate. They work as a unit. You need to be prepared for all of them." "How?" "By being exactly what they don't expect." He stood, crossing to a cabinet and retrieving a velvet box. "You won't be the desperate girl Percival abandoned. You'll be the Duchess of Hartmore, untouchable, unshakable, and completely in control." He opened the box. Inside lay a parure of diamonds and midnight sapphires, necklace, earrings, bracelet, tiara. "These belong to my grandmother," Theron said. "She wore them when she faced down a king's mistress who tried to claim precedence over her. She didn't flinch then, and you won't flinch now." Elowen touched the tiara with trembling fingers. "I'm not your grandmother. No. You're something she never had to be." He closed the box and pressed it into her hands. "You're a survivor. Use that." The 5 days before the ball passed in a fever of preparation, more lessons, more rehearsals. The modiste arrived from York with 3 new gowns, each more elaborate than the last. The hairdresser practiced styles that would showcase the tiara. Mrs. Pemberton drilled Elowen on the guest list until she could recite connections and scandals in her sleep. The night before they were to leave, Elowen couldn't sleep. She found herself in the library at midnight, staring at the fire, trying to calm her racing heart. Footsteps approached. Theron appeared in the doorway, still dressed, clearly as sleepless as she was. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified." She laughed, but it came out shaky. "What if I freeze? What if I see him and forget everything I'm supposed to do?" Theron crossed the room until he stood before her. "Then you remember what he did to you. You remember standing in the rain while he drove away laughing. You remember the families he destroyed, the lives he stole. My brother dead in a field with Whitmore paid hands on the rifle." His voice was quiet, but his eyes burned. "You walk into that ballroom as living proof that he failed. You look him in the eye, and you don't flinch. That's all. Just don't flinch. And if I do, you won't." His hand rose to her face, cupping her cheek. His touch was warm, gentle, unexpected. "I've watched you for 3 weeks, Elowen. You don't know how to flinch. It's not in your nature. You have too much faith in me. I have exactly the right amount." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'll be beside you. Whatever comes, we face it together. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Say it. We face it together." He smiled, that small, rare expression that transformed his severe features. "That's my Duchess." For a moment they stood there, his hand on her face, the fire casting dancing shadows, the distance between them shrinking to nothing. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we go to war." Lady Ashworth's estate blazed with light. Carriages lined the drive for half a mile, each depositing guests in silk and diamonds at the grand entrance. Music drifted from the ballroom, mingling with laughter and the clink of champagne glasses. Elowen sat in the Hartmore carriage, her hands clenched in her lap, watching the spectacle through the window. The midnight blue gown made her waist impossibly small. The sapphires and diamonds glittered at her throat, ears, and hair. She looked like a duchess. She didn't feel like one. "Breathe," Theron said quietly. He sat across from her, devastatingly handsome in formal black, his gray eyes watchful. "I'm breathing. You're holding your breath. I can tell." He leaned forward, taking her hands in his. "Look at me." She met his eyes. "You are the Duchess of Hartmore. You outrank everyone in that ballroom except the hostess. You have survived abandonment, betrayal, and 3 weeks of my grandmother's etiquette manuals. You can survive a ball." Despite everything, she laughed. "There." His grip tightened briefly. "Hold on to that. Whatever happens, you are not the girl Percival threw away. You are the woman who rose from the ashes of everything he destroyed." The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Theron descended first, then turned to offer his hand. Elowen took it, stepping down into the warm summer night, into the curious gazes of 100 strangers. The whispers began immediately. "Is that the new Duchess of Hartmore? I heard she was nobody, a complete unknown." "She doesn't look like nobody." Theron tucked her hand into his arm, his posture protective and proprietary. "Ignore them," he murmured. "Let them wonder." They ascended the grand staircase together, announced at the ballroom entrance by a butler whose voice carried over the crowd. His Grace, the Duke of Hartmore, and Her Grace, the Duchess of Hartmore. 200 heads turned. Elowen kept her spine straight, her chin lifted, her expression serene. She felt the weight of their assessment, the searching for flaws, and the measuring of worth. She gave them nothing. Lady Ashworth descended upon them immediately, all smiles and calculation. "Your Grace, what a delight, and this must be your bride." She examined Elowen with sharp eyes. "My dear, you're even more beautiful than rumor suggested." "Thank you, Lady Ashworth. Your hospitality is legendary, and I see now that legend doesn't do it justice." The right words, the right tone. Lady Ashworth's smile became genuine. For the next hour, Elowen navigated the ballroom like a general surveying a battlefield. She accepted introductions. She made appropriate small talk. She deflected questions about her background with graceful vagueness, and all the while, she watched for Percival. She saw his parents first. Lord Edmund Whitmore stood near the refreshment table, speaking with a group of older men. Lady Marguerite held court by the windows, her laughter carrying across the room. But Percival... "He's watching you." Theron's voice, low in her ear. His hand pressed against the small of her back. "Where?" "Near the orchestra. Don't look. Let him come to you." Elowen forced herself to continue her conversation with Lady Pemberton, something about charity work in the northern parishes. Her heart pounded. Her palms were damp inside her gloves. The music changed. A waltz began. "Dance with me," Theron said. They took the floor together, moving through the opening steps with practiced ease. Other couples joined them, swirling around them like satellites around a sun. "He's still watching," Theron murmured. "He looks angry." "Good. Very good." Theron's hand tightened at her waist. "When this dance ends, we'll speak with Lady Ashworth. That will force him to approach or look like a coward." The waltz ended. Applause scattered through the ballroom. Theron led her toward their hostess. They didn't make it 3 steps before Percival appeared in their path. He looked exactly as she remembered. Tall, golden-haired, devastatingly handsome. But his eyes, those warm brown eyes that had once seemed so sincere, were hard as stones. "Your Grace." He bowed to Theron, a minimum of courtesy. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting your wife." "Haven't you?" Theron's voice could have frozen the champagne. "How curious. Ellawen, may I present Lord Percival Whitmore. Lord Whitmore, my wife, the Duchess of Hartmore." Percival's gaze locked onto Ellawen's face. She watched recognition flood his features. Shock. Disbelief. Fear. "You," he breathed. "Lord Whitmore." Ellawen curtsied perfectly, as her tutors had taught her. "What a pleasure to see you again. You're supposed to be—" He caught himself, but not quickly enough. "Supposed to be what, Lord Whitmore?" Theron's voice carried just enough to attract nearby attention. "Please, do finish that thought." Percival's jaw clenched. Around them, conversations had paused. People were watching. "I believe," Ellawen said sweetly, "Lord Whitmore is surprised to see me so well. When last we met, I was in rather diminished circumstances." "Were you?" Lady Ashworth appeared at her elbow, drawn by the spectacle. "How intriguing. Do tell." "Oh, it's quite a story." Ellawen smiled, watching Percival's face drain of color. "Lord Whitmore was kind enough to offer me a ride in his carriage, but I'm afraid we had a disagreement. He left me at a coaching inn in the rain without transportation or funds." Gasps rippled through the nearby guests. "Surely not," Lady Ashworth said, her eyes gleaming with scandalized delight. "I'm afraid so, but fortunately, my husband happened to be traveling that same road." Ellawen looked up at Theron with perfectly performed adoration. "He rescued me from a most unpleasant situation." "And married her within the fortnight," Theron added. "I recognized quality when I saw it, even if others couldn't." Percival's face flushed red, then white. His fists clenched at his sides. "This is absurd," he hissed. "She's lying. She's a thief and a thief?" Theron's voice went dangerously soft. "What exactly do you believe my wife stole, Lord Whitmore?" The ballroom had gone silent. 200 people watched the confrontation unfold. Percival looked around, finally realizing how badly he'd miscalculated. Nothing. A misunderstanding." "I thought so." Theron's smile didn't reach his eyes. "If you'll excuse us, Lady Ashworth has kindly offered to introduce my wife to Lord Ashworth. We wouldn't want to keep them waiting." He guided Ellawen away, leaving Percival standing alone in a circle of whispers. As they walked, Theron squeezed her hand. "You didn't flinch," he murmured. "I didn't flinch," she agreed, amazed at her own steadiness. "He's terrified now. He knows you've talked. He knows you're protected. And he knows everything he tried to destroy is now beyond his reach." Ellawen glanced back. Percival stood where they'd left him, his face a mask of fury and fear. "Good," she thought. "Now you know how it feels." But as she watched, she saw Lady Marguerite approach her son, saw them exchange rapid whispers, saw both of them turn to look at her with expressions that promised this was far from over. The opening shot had been fired. The war had only just begun. The rest of the ball passed in a careful dance of politics and observation. Ellawen smiled, conversed, and accepted compliments on her gown while cataloging every glance the Whitmores exchanged. They were planning something. She could feel it. Near midnight, she excused herself to the ladies' retiring room. The corridors were quieter here, away from the music and chatter. She welcomed the silence, the chance to breathe without being watched. She was adjusting her gloves when the door opened behind her. Lady Marguerite Whitmore stepped inside, closing the door with a soft click. "Your Grace." The older woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. How fortunate to find you alone. Eowyn's heart hammered, but she kept her expression serene. Lady Whitmore, are you enjoying the ball? I was, until I saw a ghost. Lady Marguerite moved closer, her silk skirts whispering against the floor. My son told me you were dealt with. Left at some roadside inn to fade into obscurity. Imagine my surprise to see you here, dripping in Heartmore diamonds. Life takes unexpected turns. Indeed it does. Lady Marguerite's voice hardened. Let me be direct, Your Grace. I don't know what lies you've told your husband, but I know what you are. A fortune hunter, a schemer, a desperate girl who latched onto the first wealthy man who showed interest. Is that what Percival told you? Percival told me you're dangerous, that you saw things you shouldn't have seen, and made threats you couldn't back up. Lady Marguerite stepped closer, close enough that Eowyn could smell her cloying perfume. Those threats end now. Or what? Or your family suffers. The mask of civility dropped completely. Your father's debts may have been paid, but there are other ways to destroy a family. Your brother's school, for instance. One word from me, and he's expelled for fabricated misconduct. Your sister's reputation? A few whispers in the right ears, and no respectable man will touch her. Your parents standing in their little village? Gone. All of it. Gone. Unless you cooperate. Eowyn forced herself to remain still. What kind of cooperation? You'll tell your husband you were mistaken about the documents, that you misread innocent paperwork and made wild accusations in a moment of emotional distress. You'll apologize publicly, claim you were overwhelmed by your sudden change in fortune, and beg the Whitmores' forgiveness. And if I refuse? Then we'll destroy everyone you love, starting with that pretty younger sister. Lady Marguerite smiled. Ivy, isn't it? 16 years old, so trusting. It would be tragic if something happened to her on the road to Heartmore. Ice flooded Eowyn's veins. You wouldn't dare. My dear girl, you have no idea what I'd dare. Lady Marguerite adjusted her gloves. You have 1 week to make your decision. After that, well, accidents do happen. She swept out, leaving Eowyn alone with her racing heart. For a moment, Eowyn couldn't move. The threat against Ivy, her baby sister, the girl who still believed the world was kind. The thought of Lady Marguerite's people anywhere near her made Eowyn want to scream, but she didn't scream. She straightened her spine, checked her reflection, and walked back to the ballroom. Theron found her immediately, reading her expression with those sharp gray eyes. What happened? Not here. She kept her voice light, her smile fixed. Take me onto the terrace. We need to talk. Outside, the summer air was warm, scented with roses from Lady Ashworth's famous gardens. They walked until they were alone, hidden by hedges from the ballroom's windows. Then Eowyn told him everything. When she finished, Theron's face was carved from stone. She threatened Ivy directly? By name. She knows where my family is, when they're traveling. Everything. Your family is already safe within Heartmore's walls. Armed guards watch every entrance. Theron's hands clenched at his sides. But we need to accelerate our timeline. The Whitmores are more desperate than I realized. What do? We stop playing defense. He turned to face her fully. I have contacts in London. Solicitors, magistrates, people who owe me favors. If we can get the Reynolds family to testify, if we can find even one of the original deeds the Whitmores forged, we can move against them legally. That could take months, or it could take days, if we're lucky. His expression softened slightly. I won't let them hurt your family, Eowyn. I swear it. I know. She touched his arm, feeling the tension beneath his coat. But I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of reacting to their moves. I want to strike first. What are you suggesting? Lady Marguerite thinks I'm going to spend the next week cowering. Instead, I'm going to find witnesses. Other families the Whitmores destroyed. People who've been too afraid to speak. Her chin lifted. If they want a war, let's give them one they can't win. Theron studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he smiled. It wasn't the cold, calculated expression she'd grown used to. This was something warmer, something real. "That's my Duchess," he said quietly. His hand rose to her face, cupping her cheek as he had that night in the library. But this time, he didn't step back. "Elowen," he murmured, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I didn't plan this. Any of it." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "When I offered you marriage, it was strategy. Pure calculation. But somewhere between then and now, it stopped being about the Whitmores. It started being about you." Her breath caught. "Theron, I'm not good at this. Sentiment, vulnerability. I've spent 7 years building walls, planning revenge, treating people as assets or obstacles." His voice was rough. "But you're neither of those things. You're something I don't have a word for. Something I didn't know I needed. I thought this was an alliance. It was. It is." He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "But I want it to be more. If you'll let it." For answer, she kissed him. Not a brief, formal touch like their wedding ceremony. This was real, hungry, honest. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. Her fingers tangled in his hair. The sounds of the ball faded into nothing. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Theron laughed. A genuine sound she'd never heard from him before. "That wasn't strategic at all," he said. "No," she agreed. "It wasn't." They stood there in the moonlight, holding each other. Two people who'd found something neither expected in the wreckage of other people's cruelty. Then Theron's expression sobered. "Tomorrow, we start the real fight," he said. "Are you ready?" Elowen thought of Lady Marguerite's threats, of Percival's fear, of all the families still waiting for justice. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's destroy them." The next 3 days were a controlled chaos of investigation and preparation. Theron's network proved extensive. Former servants of the Whitmore household, solicitors who'd handled suspicious land transfers, magistrates who'd been paid to look the other way and now feared exposure. One by one, they came forward, drawn by the promise of protection and the scent of the Whitmores' impending fall. The Reynolds family was found in a Manchester tenement, the widow and 3 children surviving on pennies. When Theron's men brought them to Hartmoor, Mrs. Reynolds wept at the sight of a proper bed. "They took everything," she told Elowen, clutching her hands. "Our farm had been in the family for 5 generations. One day, men came with papers saying it belonged to Lord Whitmore. My husband tried to fight. They beat him so badly he never recovered." "Do you remember the men?" "I remember their leader. Called himself Mr. Crane. Tall, thin, cruel eyes." Mrs. Reynolds shuddered. "He told my husband that Lord Whitmore could have anyone killed who stood in his way, that no one would investigate, that we should be grateful we were only losing our land and not our lives." "Would you testify to that? In public?" Mrs. Reynolds hesitated. Fear flickered across her worn face. "I have children to protect." "I know. And I'm asking you to trust that I can protect them." Elowen squeezed her hands. "The Whitmores threatened my family too. My sister, my parents. But I'm done being afraid. I'm done letting them win." She met the widow's eyes. "Help me stop them from ever doing this to anyone else." Mrs. Reynolds was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I'll testify." More witnesses emerged. A former Whitmore clerk who'd kept copies of forged documents. A stable hand who'd overheard Percival discussing the hunting accident that killed Theron's brother. A maid who'd seen Lady Marguerite burning evidence the night before an audit. By the 5th day, They had enough. Lord Ashworth has agreed to host a hearing, Theron announced at dinner. Tomorrow afternoon, the Whitmores have been summoned to address allegations of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit murder. A public hearing. Semi-public. 30 witnesses, including magistrates, members of parliament, and several lords whose own families may have been victimized. Theron's smile was sharp as a blade. The Whitmores can't refuse without looking guilty, and they can't prepare without knowing what evidence we have. They'll try something. Lady Marguerite won't go down without a fight. Let her try. Your family is safe within these walls. The witnesses are protected. And tomorrow, the truth comes out. That night, Eowyn couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, watching moonlight silver the moors, trying to calm her racing thoughts. A knock at her door. Theron entered, still dressed, his face drawn with the same sleeplessness. "Tomorrow," he said simply. "Tomorrow." He crossed to stand beside her, both of them gazing out at the darkness. "Whatever happens," he said, "I want you to know that finding you was the best thing I've ever done. Not for strategy, not for revenge, for me. I feel the same." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was thrown away by someone who saw me as worthless. You saw me as something else. I saw you as extraordinary. I still do." They stood there in silence until dawn began to lighten the horizon. Then Theron kissed her forehead, gentle and certain. "Get some rest," he said. "Today, we end this." The hearing took place in Lord Ashworth's great hall, transformed into a makeshift courtroom. 30 chairs arranged in rows. A table for the accused. A table for the accusers. And at the head of the room, Lord Ashworth himself, serving as magistrate. The Whitmores arrived in a show of confidence. Lord Edmund strode in first, his wife on his arm, Percival behind them. All three wore expressions of righteous indignation. "This is an outrage," Lord Edmund declared before even taking his seat. "Baseless accusations from a nobody who seduced the Duke of Hartmore with her lies." "Lord Whitmore," Lord Ashworth said coldly, "you'll have your opportunity to speak. For now, be seated." Eowyn sat beside Theron at the accuser's table. Her hands were steady, her heart was calm. She'd been waiting for this moment since that rainy night at the inn. The proceedings began. Theron spoke first, laying out the accusations in precise, devastating detail. 20 years of forged land deeds, dozens of families dispossessed through fraud, bribes to magistrates, threats to witnesses, and ultimately, murder. "My brother Callum was killed 7 years ago," Theron said, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. "The Whitmores arranged his death because he stood between Percival and a woman Percival wanted. I have witnesses who heard the conspiracy discussed. I have evidence that the rifle was tampered with." "Lies," Percival shot to his feet. "Callum Blackwood died in a hunting accident. The inquest confirmed it." "The inquest was bribed," Theron responded. "As was the coroner, as were the witnesses." He nodded to his solicitor. "Call the first witness." One by one, they came. Mrs. Reynolds, trembling but resolute, describing her family's destruction. The former clerk, producing copies of forged deeds with Whitmore signatures. The stable hand, recounting Percival's boasts about removing obstacles. The maid, describing Lady Marguerite's midnight document burning. With each witness, the Whitmores' composure cracked further. Lord Edmund's face went from red to white to gray. Lady Marguerite's smile became a rictus. And Percival looked like a man watching his world collapse. Finally, Eowyn was called to testify. She stood before the assembly, feeling the weight of 30 gazes. In the front row sat her family, brought safely to witness this moment. Her mother was weeping. Her father's face was proud. And Ivy, her sister, watched with wide eyes full of trust. "I was engaged to Lord Percival Whitmore," Eowyn began. I believed him to be honorable. I was wrong. She told them everything. The documents she'd found. Percival's threats. Being abandoned at the inn. Lady Marguerite's threats against her family. I was left in the rain to be destroyed, she said. But I was found by a man who offered me truth instead of lies, protection instead of threats, and the chance to stand here today and speak for all the families the Whitmores have harmed. You're lying, Percival hissed. You were always a liar, a fortune hunter who— Lord Whitmore, Lord Ashworth interrupted, control yourself or be removed. I demand a chance to respond. This is a farce, a conspiracy orchestrated by Hartmore to destroy my family. Then respond. Lord Ashworth gestured. Present your evidence, call your witnesses, prove your innocence. Silence. The Whitmores looked at each other. Lord Edmund opened his mouth, closed it. Lady Marguerite's mask finally shattered completely. We have nothing to say to this kangaroo court, she spat. These proceedings are illegitimate. We'll appeal to London, to the Crown itself if necessary. The Crown has already been informed, Theron said quietly. A magistrate from London arrived this morning. He's been listening from the gallery. All eyes turned to the shadows at the back of the hall, where a man in judicial robes stepped forward. Sir Aldrich Wentworth, Theron announced, Chief Magistrate of the King's Bench. The name struck the Whitmores like a blow. This wasn't a provincial hearing they could manipulate. This was royal justice, inescapable and final. Lord Edmund Whitmore, Sir Aldrich said, his voice resonant with authority. Lady Marguerite Whitmore, Lord Percival Whitmore, you are hereby placed under arrest pending formal charges of fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and murder. Guards. Soldiers appeared from the side doors. Lord Edmund tried to run. Lady Marguerite screamed. And Percival. Percival looked at Elowin with pure hatred. You'll regret this, he snarled as they dragged him away. I'll find a way to make you pay. No, Elowin said calmly, you won't. The doors closed behind them, and the hall erupted in chaos. But through it all, Elowin stood steady, feeling Theron's hand find hers, feeling the weight of 7 years of injustice finally lifting. They'd won. The trial in London lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Lord Edmund was sentenced to life imprisonment. Lady Marguerite received 20 years. And Percival, whose involvement in Callum's death was proven beyond doubt, was hanged at Newgate. Elowin did not attend the execution. She didn't need to. Instead, she stood in the great hall of Hartmore Castle, watching a different kind of gathering. 15 women sat at tables throughout the room, learning skills that would help them rebuild their lives. Sewing, accounting, reading, writing. Women who'd been dispossessed by the Whitmores, abandoned by the system, left with nothing. She called it the Hartmore Women's Haven. Theron called it her legacy. 3 more applications this week, Mrs. Pemberton reported. Word is spreading. Can we accommodate them? The West Wing renovations are nearly complete. We'll have room for 20 more by month's end. Elowin nodded, satisfaction warming her chest. This was what survival looked like. Not just enduring, but building something that would protect others. Your Grace? A young woman appeared in the doorway. There's a visitor. She says she knew Lord Percival. Elowin tensed. Send her in. The visitor was perhaps 25, well-dressed but nervous. She curtsied deeply. Your Grace, my name is Arabella Thornwood. I was engaged to Percival before you. Before he discarded me for someone with better connections. I'm sorry. Don't be. Arabella's chin lifted. I came to tell you that you weren't the only one. There were others. Women he courted, used, and threw away when we became inconvenient. I've been gathering their stories, their testimony. She pulled a leather folder from her bag. I thought you might want to help them too. Elowin took the folder, opening it to find page after page of names, dates, accounts of cruelty. How many? 11 that I've found, probably more. 11 women. 11 lives damaged or destroyed by Whitmore cruelty. And they'd all been suffering in silence, too ashamed or afraid to speak. Bring them to me, Elowen said. All of them. They'll have a place here. After Arabella left, Theron found Elowen in the library, surrounded by the testimonies. More victims? He asked. 11 more. Maybe more than that. She looked up at him. The Whitmores are destroyed, but the damage they caused is still spreading. I want to fix it. All of it. That could take years. Then it takes years. She stood, crossing to him. I was saved because you happened to be on that road. These women weren't so lucky. I want to be their luck. Theron studied her face, something soft and wondering in his expression. When I found you at that inn, he said quietly, I saw a weapon. Someone I could use to destroy my enemies. He cupped her face in his hands. I didn't expect to find my heart. You're getting better at sentiment. I'm learning. He kissed her forehead. From the best teacher. 6 months later, the Hartmore Women's Haven had grown to house 43 women and their children. The Reynolds family had been restored to a new farm, purchased with Whitmore assets seized by the Crown. Elowen's parents lived comfortably in a cottage on the Hartmore estate, and her brother was thriving at university. Ivy had 3 suitors already, all of them terrified of her sister's reputation. On a cold winter evening, Elowen stood in the library, watching snow fall outside the windows. The cold reminded her of that night at the inn, when she'd stood in the rain, wondering if anyone would ever find her. Theron appeared in the doorway, a small velvet box in his hand. I have something for you. Another gift? You've given me too many already. This one is different. He crossed to her, opening the box. Inside lay a ring, a band of white gold set with a single sapphire that caught the firelight. It was my grandmother's, he said. She gave it to my grandfather when he returned from war. She told him it represented her promise to stand beside him through every battle, no matter the cost. He took her hand. I want you to have it. For the same reason. Elowen's eyes glistened. We've already won our war. We've won this one. He slid the ring onto her finger, beside her wedding band. But there will be others. Other families to protect. Other injustices to fight. Other battles that matter. He met her eyes. I want to fight them all beside you. You're not going to get tired of me? I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. You were thrown away once. I found you. And I'm never letting go. She kissed him then, in the library where they'd first began to trust each other, while snow gathered on the windowsills and the fire crackled warm. She'd been abandoned in the rain by a man who saw her as disposable. She'd been found by a man who saw her as irreplaceable. And together, they'd built something neither had planned, but both had needed. Still unmarried? Percival had laughed that day in the courtyard. Now she was a duchess, a protector, a force that would shelter others the way she'd once needed sheltering. And Percival was dead, unmourned, forgotten. Justice, it turned out, was patient. But it always arrived. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. If this story touched something in you, the fight for justice, the power of being chosen, the strength it takes to survive, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment and where you are listening from. If you're ready for another story where love conquers the impossible, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the next chapter. You're the reason these stories exist. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing that even in the coldest moments, love can find a way.